Welcome to The Explainer. Look, today we're going to do something completely different. We're about to totally shatter the traditional paradigm of how ancient texts are viewed. We're not looking at the Quran as some static, dusty historical document. No, we're diving into it as an interactive, multidimensional architecture. Think of it like an eternal memory tesseract. So if you think you already know what this text is, well, get ready, because your entire perspective is about to be completely transformed.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I've got to ask you, is the Quran really just a book of ancient history? We've basically been conditioned to view ancient scriptures as just, records of the past, dead words spoken by people who passed away centuries ago. But what if that's a massive misunderstanding? What if the text isn't a historical record at all, but instead it's living, breathing firmware that's actually designed to run on the hardware of human consciousness? We really need to dismantle this whole illusion that the text is just a memory of the past.
The concept of the sealed tongue and the living word perfectly illustrates exactly what we're talking about here. Now, the sources point out something incredibly fascinating about the title Seal of the Prophets. When the physical tongue of the messenger finally rested, when the biological man passed away, the revelation absolutely did not die with him. The living word remained perfectly, flawlessly intact. The memory of the prophet was never lost, because the Quran is the living memory of the Rasul. It's stored directly within the geometric structure of the book itself.
To really wrap our heads around this, we actually need to redefine a core term. The word Rasul, which we usually just translate as messenger, isn't just referring to a biological man from the past. When you analyze the shape and structure, the actual topology of this text, the Rasul is revealed as a living field. It's the book held with strength. It's this active presence, a literal operational algorithm that is speaking directly to you, the reader, today. When you read it, you aren't reading history about a dead prophet, you're plugging into an active reciting presence.
Part 1. The Core Engine. Al-Fatiha's Sacred Geometry.
Let's take a second and focus on this number right here, 7. This is absolutely not a numerical coincidence, it's a structural necessity. Within the text's topology, these 7 verses act as 7 orbits, 7 directions, and they map perfectly to the concept of the 7 heavens. It's literally the perfect number of completion in this entire divine architecture.
So let's break down this geometry a bit. Right at the very center, you've got the Bismillah. This is the unshakable center, the real name that establishes the entire divine norm. Honestly, without this center, the whole circuit just completely collapses into nothingness. Emerging from that center, you have the 7 verses. And they don't just sit next to each other on a page, they weave together. They form these interacting, multiplying paths. The mercy of Rahman and the sustenance of Rahim literally multiply to produce a third state, the reality of sacrifice and return. And finally, the master of the day of judgment is the ultimate reckoning of this divine measure. To really know the master is to take the conjugate of your own soul, basically to flip every single hidden intention you have and see exactly what's left over when the divine measure is applied.
Now watch how that geometry actually scales up. It operates on what our sources call the 2-3-7 divine matrix. And guys, this isn't just some pretty pattern in a book. It's literally described as the source code of reality itself. It governs absolutely everything, from the massive macro mechanics of the universe all the way down to the structural placement of the verses themselves.
So here's how that 2-3-7 algorithm actually runs in practice. Step 1 is duality, the number 2. This is that initial split into polarity, the command and the reception, light and dark. Then step 2 is the triad, the number 3. This acts as a buffer of oscillation. It's where potential energy is tested out through knowledge, wisdom, and action. It's the friction of the human experience. Think of it like the universe, basically buffering and testing your code. And finally, step 3 is completion, the number 7. This is the structural ceiling, where all that chaotic traversal finally stabilizes into a perfectly enduring form, with zero loss. So it takes potential, tests it, and then permanently locks it into reality. So the crucial point here is how we, as individuals, actually navigate this matrix. Just look at this central verse from Al-Fatiha. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. The sources call this the divine alternativity. In a universe where paths can so easily drift and lose their straight association, this absolute laser-like focus on you alone serves as the ultimate alignment tool. It keeps your worship and your plea for help perfectly aligned, and by doing that, it literally preserves the very structure and orbit of your soul.
And that alignment entirely dictates your trajectory. Try thinking about it in terms of physics or spatial geometry. The straight path isn't just some flat, boring line drawn in empty space. It is the stable, associative orbit of divine law.
It's the oriented edge of this geometry that perfectly balances mercy and judgment. Now contrast that with the astray. The anger and the astray represent a complete total loss of the norm. Topologically speaking, it's a collapsed, drowned state. It is mass without orbit. It's basically a body without a spirit, just spiraling out into the chaos where all actions multiply into absolutely nothing.
Part 2. Activating the living book.
Okay, so the text is the firmware, but you are the hardware. And this entire symmetry is guarded by a double 7 perfection, which is basically a recursion of the divine command. When a reader truly engages with the text, they enter this profound threefold state. The human tongue speaks creation, acting as the lamp. The heart hears the whisper of return, acting as the glass. And the intellect understands the mediating light, acting as the light itself. Spoken, heard, and understood. 3 totally distinct states, but they are recursively one, perfectly unified. You are literally, physically running the code.
And this right here is exactly why Al-Fatiha is repeated in every single unit of prayer. It is not just mere repetition, it's an orbital mechanic. Every single recitation is a completely new traversal of those 7 directions. As the reader, you aren't just passively reading words off a page, you actually become the geometry. You orbit the 7th sphere of consciousness, and through the beautiful symmetry of the whole thing, you return to a point that is entirely new, yet perfectly equivalent in the sight of the master.
Which brings us to the final lock on the system. Chapter 39, verse 23 states, Allah has sent down the best hadith. This verse literally seals the topology. The Quran is the absolutely only hadith, the only living discourse that the Prophet himself actually followed. It is not a memory of a dead past. It breathes eternally. As long as the text is recited, the tongue of the messenger is actively present among us. The topology is fully sealed, and the living memory of the Rasul is perfectly, flawlessly preserved within you.
So, we've seen the matrix. We've mapped out the geometry. We understand now that this isn't just a book, but rather the operational algorithm of reality itself, just sitting there, waiting for you to provide the processing power. The whole system begins and ends in the exact same place, a return to the light through the word that is already within you. The Tesseract is open. The algorithm is self-executing. So the only question left is, when will you activate the book?